The spring of 1815 brought London society to life with glittering ballrooms and ruthless ambition. In the Whitmore mansion, crystal chandeliers cast golden light over silk gowns and tailored coats, but Theodora Whitmore felt none of its warmth. She moved through the crowd with a silver tray balanced in her hands, her simple grey dress marking her as something less than a guest. 26 years old, unmarried, and invisible. That's what her stepmother had made her. A cautionary tale whispered behind fans. "More champagne, Miss Theodora?" a young footman asked, his voice kind. "Thank you, Peter," she said softly, managing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her fingers trembled slightly as she gripped the tray. She'd learned to hide most reactions, but tonight felt different. Dangerous. Lady Whitmore stood at the centre of the ballroom, her laugh too loud, her gestures too broad. Theodora's stepmother thrived on attention, and tonight she promised the gathered ton a spectacle. Theodora's heart sank when their eyes met. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lady Whitmore's voice rang out, silencing conversations. "I must address a matter of great concern to our family." "No, not tonight. Not in front of everyone. My dear stepdaughter, Theodora, has reached the unfortunate age of 26. Lady Whitmore's mouth curved in full sympathy. "Unmarried, unwanted, and, frankly, a burden upon our household." Heat flooded Theodora's cheeks. The tray in her hands wobbled. Around her she could feel eyes turning, whispers beginning. Someone laughed. A cruel, sharp sound that cut through her composure. "I am, therefore, offering," Lady Whitmore continued, her voice dripping with magnanimity, £50 to any gentleman willing to take her off our hands. Surely someone here needs the funds." Laughter rippled through the ballroom. Not nervous laughter, but genuine amusement. They found her humiliation entertaining. Theodora stood frozen, her body refusing to move. She'd endured years of cruelty, but this public degradation, felt like being flayed alive. Her vision blurred. She would not cry. She would not give them that satisfaction. A hand touched her elbow. "Miss," Peter whispered urgently, "perhaps you should stay exactly where you are." The voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk, deep, commanding, and absolutely furious. Theodora's head snapped up. Augustus Blackwell, Duke of Ashford, stood 10 feet away, his tall frame rigid with barely contained rage. His dark eyes, usually cold and disinterested at social gatherings, burned as they fixed on Lady Whitmore. The ballroom fell silent. He moved forward with deliberate steps, his Hessian boots clicking against marble. The crowd parted instantly. No one dared stand in the path of England's most powerful duke when he looked like he might commit murder. But he didn't approach Lady Whitmore. He walked directly to Theodora. Her breath caught. She'd seen him before. Everyone had. The Duke of Ashford attended perhaps 3 events per season, spoke to almost no one, and left early. He was a ghost at these gatherings, haunting the edges with an expression of profound disdain. Now he stood before her, so close she could smell sandalwood, and something darker, more complex. And then, impossibly, he knelt. The Duke of Ashford knelt before her on the ballroom floor. "Miss Whitmore," he said, his voice carrying across the stunned silence, "would you do me the extraordinary honour of considering my proposal of marriage?" Theodora couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This wasn't real. It was another form of mockery, crueler than her stepmother's because it offered false hope. "Your Grace," she managed, her voice barely a whisper, "you don't have to—" "I am not a man who does things he doesn't want to do," he interrupted, his eyes never leaving hers. They were dark grey, she realised, like storm clouds before rain. I am asking you sincerely to be my wife. But why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, perhaps, or recognition. Because I've watched you for 3 months, and you are the only genuine person in this entire God-forsaken circus. Your Grace, Lady Whitmore pushed through the crowd, her face mottled with fury and panic. Surely you're not serious. This is highly irregular. Theodora has no dowry, no connections, nothing to... Be silent. Augustus didn't raise his voice, but the command in it made Lady Whitmore stumble back. He rose fluidly, still keeping himself between Theodora and her stepmother. Your stepdaughter requires nothing but herself. Unlike the rest of you, she has something no amount of money can buy. And what is that? Someone called from the crowd. Integrity. He turned back to Theodora and his voice softened. Miss Whitmore, I understand if you need time to consider, but please believe me when I say this is not jest, not pity, and certainly not a response to that vile display. His jaw tightened. I have wanted to ask you for weeks. Tonight merely gave me the courage to stop waiting. Theodora's hands were still trembling. Her tray had been taken by someone, Peter probably, and now she had nothing to hold on to. Nothing except the impossible possibility that this was real. Her voice cracked. I don't understand. You don't have to. Not yet. He extended his hand, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. Will you walk with me, away from this crowd? She looked at his hand, strong, scarred across the knuckles, steady, then up at his face. He wasn't smiling. There was no smugness, no triumph, only patience and something that looked almost like hope. Theodora placed her hand in his. Gasps and whispers exploded around them, but Augustus ignored them completely. He tucked her hand into the crook of his elbow and guided her through the parting crowd toward the terrace doors. Behind them, Lady Whitmore's voice rose in shrill protest. This is outrageous! You demand nothing, Augustus said without turning. Mr. Pemberton will contact you tomorrow regarding Miss Whitmore's belongings and legal affairs. Good evening. The cool night air hit Theodora's overheated face like a benediction. Her legs felt unsteady, and she gripped his arm without thinking. Easy, he murmured. You're safe now. Safe. The word sounded foreign. They walked to the far end of the terrace, where the noise of the ballroom faded to a murmur. The garden stretched beyond, dark and fragrant with early roses. Theodora pulled her hand away and wrapped her arms around herself. Why did you do that? I told you. No. She turned to face him, and all the pain of the evening, of years, crystallized into anger. Why would you humiliate yourself by associating with me? Everyone in there knows what I am, a spinster, a burden, someone so undesirable my own family has to bribe people to take me. Stop. His voice turned hard. Don't repeat their poison. It's not poison if it's true. It's lies. He stepped closer and she saw the fury in his face, but not at her. 3 balls ago, I watched you console a young girl who'd been abandoned by her dance partner. You gave her your handkerchief and told her that cruelty said more about the giver than the recipient. Do you remember? Theodora blinked. Yes, but 2 weeks ago at the Pembroke Musicale, you helped Lady Ashton to her carriage when her arthritis was paining her, even though she'd never spoken a kind word to you. How do you... I notice things. He took another step, and now they were close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I notice that you're kind to servants who others ignore, that you read philosophy books when you think no one is watching, that you have a terrible habit of biting your lower lip when you're nervous. His gaze dropped to her mouth. Like you're doing right now? Her lip popped free. That doesn't explain. I'm lonely, Miss Whitmore. The admission was quiet, almost lost in the night breeze. I've been lonely for 6 years, ever since I learned that the woman I'd planned to marry had been laughing at me with her lover. I stopped believing in genuine connection, stopped looking for it. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a loose curl from her cheek. The touch was feather light, but left fire in its wake. Then I saw you, he continued, being treated abominably and still choosing kindness, still choosing to see others. And I thought, perhaps I'd been looking in the wrong places. Theodora's eyes burned. This is insane. You don't know me. Then let me. His thumb traced her jawline. I'm not asking you to love me tomorrow. I'm asking you to give us both a chance to find something real. And if I say no, then I'll still ensure Lady Whitmore never hurts you again, and I'll respect your decision. His hand fell away. But I hope you'll say yes. She should refuse. This was madness. People like Augustus Blackwell didn't marry people like her. There had to be a catch, a hidden cruelty waiting to reveal itself. But his eyes held hers, steady and patient, and she couldn't find deception in them. I'll need time, she whispered. You'll have it. His shoulders relaxed slightly. But I'd prefer you have that time in my household, where you're safe, rather than with your stepmother. That's highly improper. I have an aunt who lives in the East Wing. She'll chaperone. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. And my butler, Morrison, is 73 and scandalized by everything. You'll be surrounded by propriety. Despite everything, Theodora felt her lips twitch. You've thought this through. I've thought of little else for weeks. The smile faded. Say yes, Theodora, please. Her name in his voice sent warmth through her chest. No one called her by her given name anymore. She'd been Miss Theodora, or that girl, or tonight, a burden. Yes, she breathed. His eyes closed briefly, and when they opened, she saw relief so profound it staggered her. Thank you. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. A proper, chaste gesture that somehow felt more intimate than anything she'd experienced. You won't regret this. I swear it. As he led her back toward the ballroom to make their formal announcement, Theodora felt the first fragile stirring of hope. Perhaps, impossibly, this was real. Perhaps she wasn't a burden, after all. Morning light streamed through windows. Theodora had never been allowed to approach in the Whitmore house. Now, she sat in a carriage lined with burgundy velvet, watching London roll past while trying to comprehend how drastically her life had changed in 12 hours. Nearly there, Miss Whitmore, the coachman called down. Miss Whitmore, not that girl or the burden. The servants Augustus had sent treated her with respect that made her chest ache. The carriage turned onto a tree-lined street, where houses became estates and estates became monuments to wealth. When they stopped, Theodora stared up at the Duke of Ashford's London residence and felt her courage falter. It was enormous. Miss Whitmore? A butler with silver hair and impeccable posture opened the carriage door. I'm Morrison. His Grace is expecting you. Thank you, she managed, accepting his gloved hand. The entrance hall alone was larger than the entire ground floor of the Whitmore house. Marble columns, paintings that belonged in museums, and a staircase that curved upward like something from a fairy tale. Theodora. She turned to find Augustus descending those stairs, and her breath caught. Last night he'd worn formal evening attire. Now, in buckskin breeches and a simple white shirt, he looked younger, more approachable, more dangerous to her fragile composure. I hope the journey wasn't too uncomfortable, he said, reaching her side. It was perfect, Your Grace. Augustus, he smiled, Oh, slightly. We're engaged. You should probably use my name. Augustus, she repeated, and it felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. A throat cleared. Morrison stood at attention, his expression carefully neutral. Shall I show Miss Whitmore to her rooms, Your Grace? I'll do it, Augustus offered his arm. Unless you prefer Morrison's company, he's much better at propriety than I am. I heard that, Your Grace, Morrison said without inflection. You were meant to. Augustus winked at Theodora, and she felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Humour. He had humour beneath all that ducal reserve. They climbed the staircase together. The east wing is entirely yours, Augustus explained. My aunt, Lady Catherine Fairfax, has rooms there as well. She's a widow and tends to do exactly as she pleases, which I find refreshing. Will she mind having me there? Mind? She's been plotting this since the first night I mentioned you. He glanced at her. Fair warning, Catherine is aggressively supportive. She'll try to adopt you immediately. They walked down a corridor lined with portraits of stern-faced Blackwells. Theodora felt their painted eyes judging her, finding her wanting. Ignore them, Augustus said quietly. Half of them were bastards anyway. She choked on a laugh. You can't say that about your ancestors. I just did. He stopped at an ornate door. These are your rooms. If anything displeases you, tell Morrison and it will be changed. He pushed the door open, and Theodora stepped into luxury she'd only dreamed of. A sitting room with windows overlooking gardens, bookshelves already filled with volumes, a writing desk, doors that presumably led to a bedroom and dressing room. I don't... She turned to him, overwhelmed. This is too much. It's barely adequate. He moved to the windows, hands clasped behind his back. I want you comfortable here. This is your home now. Home. The word landed strangely. She hadn't had a home in 8 years, not since her father married Lady Whitmore. There's something else. Augustus crossed to the bookshelves and ran his finger along the spines. I noticed you reading Wollstonecraft at the Pembroke Musicale. You hid the cover, but I recognised it. Heat flooded her cheeks. I didn't think anyone saw. I told you, I noticed things. He pulled a book from the shelf and handed it to her. Mary Wollstonecraft, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, first edition. Theodora took it with trembling hands. This is... I can't accept. You can. And there's more. Philosophy, poetry, political theory, everything I thought you might enjoy. His expression turned uncertain. If I overstepped... No. She clutched the book to her chest. No, this is... No one has ever... Her voice broke. Augustus closed the distance between them. Theodora, listen to me. Everything here is yours. The books, the rooms, the safety. You don't need to earn it or prove yourself worthy. It's yours simply because you exist. A tear escaped despite her best efforts, then another. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Be treated like I matter. The naked pain in her voice made him flinch. You do matter. You matter enormously. To you, a man who barely knows me. Then let me know you. He produced a handkerchief, finely embroidered with his initials, and offered it. Stay. Read whatever you like. Walk the gardens. Sleep until noon if it pleases you. Just stay. She dabbed at her eyes, ruining the expensive fabric with tears and probably cosmetics. Why are you so kind to me? Because everyone else has been cruel. He said it simply, as if it were obvious. And because I want to be. Is that enough? It should have been. It was more than she'd ever expected. But years of Lady Whitmore's poison made trust difficult. I'll try, she whispered at. That's all I ask. He stepped back, restoring proper distance. I'll let you rest. But later, if you're amenable, I thought we might have tea in the library. Catherine will join us. She's dying to meet you properly." After he left, Theodora sank into a velvet chair and stared at the book in her hands. A first edition of Wollstonecraft, given to her as if it were nothing when it represented everything. For the first time in 8 years, she let herself cry, not from pain, but from relief so profound it felt like drowning. The library was a cathedral to literature, 2 stories high with rolling ladders and windows that bathed everything in golden afternoon light. Theodora stood in the doorway, awestruck. "Impressive, isn't it?" A woman's voice came from a chair by the fireplace. "Augustus inherited it from his grandfather, the only Blackwell with more sense than arrogance." Lady Catherine Fairfax was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked auburn hair and keen blue eyes. She wore deep purple, still in half-mourning for a husband who died 3 years prior, and radiated the kind of confidence that came from not caring what society thought. "Miss Whitmore." Catherine rose and crossed to her. "Let me look at you properly." Theodora endured the scrutiny, fighting the urge to fidget. "Good bone structure," Catherine announced. "Intelligent eyes, terrible posture, but that's from years of trying to be invisible, I expect." She smiled suddenly, transforming her face. "You'll do nicely." "For what?" Theodora asked, confused. "For shaking up my nephew in this dreadful social circle." Catherine linked their arms and steered her toward the seating area. "Come, Augustus will join us shortly. He's dealing with something tedious about property law." Tea had been laid out with almost aggressive elegance. Sandwiches, pastries, fruit. Enough for 10 people. "Morrison's nervous," Catherine explained, catching Theodora's look. "He thinks Augustus has gone mad and wants to ensure you're properly fed in case you flee." Despite herself, Theodora laughed. "Has he gone mad?" "Probably." Catherine poured tea with practiced grace. "But it's the best kind of madness, the kind that might actually lead to happiness. You don't find this situation strange?" "I find it delightful." Catherine handed her a cup. "Augustus has been a ghost for 6 years, attending events out of duty, speaking to no one, coming home alone. I've watched him fade into duty and tradition and loneliness." Her eyes softened. "Then, 3 months ago, he came home from a ball and mentioned a woman who'd helped someone everyone else ignored. He talked about you for an hour without realizing it." Theodora's hand shook slightly, rattling the cup. "He never spoke to me." "He was building courage." Catherine leaned forward. "My nephew is brilliant with military strategy and estate management. But emotional vulnerability? That terrifies him." "Why?" "Because the last woman he loved betrayed him spectacularly." Catherine's voice turned hard. "Lady Margaret Ashton. She wanted the title, not the man. Augustus discovered her with her lover 2 weeks before their wedding. The lover was his best friend." Pain lanced through Theodora's chest. "That's awful." "It nearly destroyed him." Catherine sipped her tea. "He retreated, built walls, decided connection wasn't worth the risk." She met Theodora's eyes. "You're the first person to make him want to tear those walls down." Before Theodora could respond, Augustus entered, looking harassed. "I apologize for the delay. There was a situation with Catherine." His eyes narrowed. "What are you telling her?" "Everything you're too cowardly to say yourself." Catherine rose and patted his cheek. "I'll leave you two alone. Try not to make a mess of this." After she swept out, Augustus took the chair she'd vacated and ran a hand through his hair. "I should have warned you about her." "She's wonderful," Theodora said honestly. "She's terrifying." But he smiled. "Though I'm glad you think so. She's one of perhaps 3 people whose opinion I value." "Who are the others?" "My solicitor, Mr. Pemberton, and you." The simple statement hit her like a physical blow. "You don't know me well enough for my opinion to matter." "I disagree." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. I've watched how you treat people. That tells me everything important. That's not enough to build a marriage on. No, he agreed, but it's a solid foundation. The rest, trust, affection, understanding, those will build together. He paused. If you're willing. Theodora set down her teacup before she dropped it. I don't understand why you want to. Because you're brilliant and kind and brave. I'm none of those things. You absolutely are. His voice turned fierce. You survived 8 years of cruelty without becoming cruel. You maintained compassion when you had every reason to become bitter. That's bravery, Theodora. That's strength most people can't comprehend. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to. What if this doesn't work? She whispered. Then we'll have tried, and neither of us will spend the rest of our lives wondering, what if? He extended his hand across the small table. I know you're frightened, so am I, but I think we might be less frightened together. Theodora looked at his hand, still scarred, still steady, and thought about Catherine's words. Augustus had been lonely for 6 years. So had she, in a different way. 2 people damaged by betrayal, reaching for something that might heal them both. She placed her hand in his fingers curled around hers, warm and secure. Thank you. For what? For giving me a chance. He smiled and it transformed his entire face. Now, would you like to see the rest of the library? I found your copy of Wollstonecraft on the table in your room. If you enjoyed that, you might like her letters. They spent the next 2 hours exploring shelves, and Theodora felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Hope. A week passed in a blur of domestic happiness Theodora hadn't known existed. Mornings in the library with Augustus, afternoons in the gardens, evenings with Catherine regaling them with scandalous stories from her youth. But London society never stayed quiet for long. Theodora was examining rose bushes when Morrison appeared, his face grave. Miss Whitmore, there's been an incident in town. Her blood chilled. What kind of incident? Perhaps you should sit down. Morrison, please, just tell me. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Lady Whitmore has been spreading rumours about your engagement. She's telling people that His Grace made a wager, that he would humiliate you in revenge for some imagined slight. The garden spun. Theodora gripped the rose trellis, thorns biting into her palm. She's also claiming, Morrison continued quietly, that you're mentally unstable, that His Grace is taking advantage of your fragile state. Of course, Lady Whitmore would do this. One last twist of the knife. Miss Whitmore? Thank you, Morrison. Her voice sounded distant. I'd like to be alone. She wandered the gardens in a daze, Lady Whitmore's poison seeping back into her mind. What if it was true? What if Augustus had some ulterior motive she was too desperate to see? No, she'd watched him, listened to him. He'd been nothing but genuine, but doubt, once planted, grew like weeds. By evening, she'd retreated to her rooms. When Augustus knocked, she pretended to be asleep. The next morning, Augustus was waiting in the breakfast room. You're avoiding me, he said without preamble. Theodora poured tea with shaking hands. I'm not. Don't lie. You're terrible at it. He rose and crossed to her. What happened? She should tell him. He deserved honesty, but the word stuck in her throat. Theodora. He tipped her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. Talk to me. Why are you really doing this? The question burst out. Why propose to someone like me when you could have anyone? His expression turned thunderous. What brought this on? Lady Whitmore is spreading rumours. She says, I don't care what she says. His voice was hard. I care what you believe. I want to believe you're genuine, but I've been fooled before. Everyone has always had an ulterior motive. I am not everyone. He released her and stepped back, running both hands through his hair. Damn it. What do I have to do to prove this is real? I don't know. Tears burned her eyes. I don't know how to trust this. You're asking me to believe that someone like you could genuinely want someone like me, and my entire life has taught me that's impossible. The silence after her outburst was deafening. Augustus stared at her, chest heaving, and she waited for him to confirm her fears. To tell her she was right, that this had all been some elaborate joke. Instead, he said quietly, Get your cloak. What? Your cloak? We're going out. I don't. Please. His voice gentled. I need to show you something. And then, if you still want to leave, I'll help you do it with enough money to live independently. But give me 2 hours first. Confused and emotionally exhausted, Theodora nodded. He took her to the gardens behind his country estate, or rather, the portion of the gardens hidden behind tall hedges. A private sanctuary she hadn't known existed. Roses bloomed everywhere, whites, pinks, deep crimsons. The air was thick with their perfume. This was my mother's garden, Augustus said, guiding her down a narrow path. She died when I was 12. No one comes here but me. Then why? Because I want you to understand something. He stopped at a stone bench and gestured for her to sit. After Lady Margaret's betrayal, I locked myself away. Emotionally, physically, I wanted nothing to do with anyone. I convinced myself that I was content alone. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Then I saw you at that ball 3 months ago, and something shifted. He turned to face her. You were helping that young girl who'd been humiliated by a dance partner. Do you remember what you said to her? Theodora nodded slowly. I told her that cruelty said more about the person delivering it than the person receiving it. You gave her your handkerchief, an expensive one with your initials. You let her ruin it with tears and cosmetics, and you didn't care. His voice roughened. And then your stepmother called you a useless shadow, and you just absorbed it, continued being kind to everyone around you while they treated you like nothing. He took her hand, and his was trembling. I've been to war, Theodora. I've seen men tortured, broken, turned into monsters by what they endured. His grey eyes held hers. You were tortured differently, but just as thoroughly. Yet you didn't break. You didn't become cruel. That kind of strength is rarer than diamonds. A tear slipped down her cheek. I don't feel strong. Because you've been told you're weak for so long that you believe it. He brushed the tear away with his thumb. But I see you. The real you. The woman who reads philosophy in secret because she's not supposed to be intelligent. Who helps others even when no one helps her. Who survived 8 years of hell and still has the capacity for hope. Augustus? I'm not finished. His hand cupped her cheek. You asked why I want to marry you. Here's the truth. I've been lonely for 6 years, surrounded by hundreds of people at every event, and utterly alone. Then I saw you, and for the first time since Lady Margaret, I thought, maybe I don't have to be lonely anymore. His forehead touched hers. You make me want to be better, kinder, more open. You make me want to tear down every wall I've built and risk being hurt again, because the possibility of connection with you is worth any pain. Theodora's breath caught. What if I can't be what you need? You already are. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. You're real, Theodora. In a world of masks and performance and calculated cruelty, you're devastatingly, beautifully real. That's all I've ever wanted. She felt her defenses crumbling. I'm terrified. So am I. He smiled slightly. But I think we can be terrified together. What do you say? She should ask for more time, more proof. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the same fear she felt reflected back at her, Theodora made a choice. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was unpracticed and awkward, their noses bumping. But then Augustus made a sound low in his throat and kissed her back, his hand sliding into her hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theodora whispered, I choose you. Thank God. He rested his forehead against hers again. I was running out of romantic gestures. She laughed, surprised by the sound. That was a romantic gesture. I'm out of practice, he grinned, but I have about 30 years to improve. She kissed him again, and this time it was easier. Better. When she pulled away, Augustus looked dazed. If you keep doing that, he said, his voice rough, I'll forget to be a gentleman. Heat flooded her cheeks. Perhaps I don't want you to be a gentleman. His eyes darkened. Theodora, kiss me again. She wound her arms around his neck. Please. He did, and for the first time in 8 years, Theodora felt like she was home. Mr. Pemberton arrived at breakfast 3 days later with the grim expression of a man bearing bad news. Your Grace, Miss Whitmore. He bowed. I apologise for the early intrusion, but there's been a development. Augustus set down his coffee cup. What kind of development? During my investigation into Lady Whitmore's finances, which you authorised, I discovered significant discrepancies. Pemberton opened his leather case and extracted documents. Miss Whitmore, your father's will stipulated that you were to receive your inheritance upon reaching your 21st birthday. The amount was substantial, approximately £40,000, along with the country estate. Theodora's hand froze halfway to her teacup. That's impossible. Lady Whitmore said father died in debt. He did not. Pemberton's voice was gentle but firm. He was quite solvent at his death. Your stepmother forged documents claiming insolvency, gained control of the estate as guardian to her daughters, and has been using your inheritance as her personal funds for 5 years. The room spun. Theodora gripped the table edge. She stole from me. I'm afraid so. Moreover, Pemberton glanced at Augustus. She's been paying off creditors by claiming you would eventually marry well and reimburse the debts. Essentially, she's been selling your future without your knowledge or consent. Augustus stood so abruptly his chair fell backward. That woman can be prosecuted, Pemberton finished calmly. The question is whether Miss Whitmore wishes to pursue legal action. All eyes turned to Theodora. She felt numb, her mind struggling to process 5 years of lies compounding into this single moment of truth. Her voice came out small. I don't want revenge. This isn't revenge. Augustus crouched beside her chair, taking her cold hands in his. It's justice. There's a difference. But if I prosecute her, everyone will know. It will be another scandal. Let them talk. His grip tightened. You've spent your entire life accommodating people who hurt you, protecting them from consequences while they destroyed you piece by piece. His eyes blazed. No more. You deserve justice, Theodora. You deserve your inheritance back, an acknowledgement of what was done to you. But I know you're kind, Catherine interjected from the doorway. When had she arrived? I know you want to be merciful, but mercy without accountability isn't mercy. It's permission for cruelty to continue. Theodora looked between them. Augustus, fierce and protective. Catherine, steady and certain. Pemberton, patient and professional. For once, people were on her side. What would prosecution entail? She asked quietly. Pemberton sat. I would file documentation with the courts. The case is clear-cut. I have bank records, forged documents, testimony from servants Lady Whitmore dismissed for questioning her actions. It would likely conclude within weeks. And then, your inheritance would be restored. Lady Whitmore would face fraud charges and likely lose custody of her daughters, though they're of age now and frankly complicit in the scheme. The daughters who tormented her for years, who'd laughed as their mother humiliated her. How public would this be? Theodora asked. Very. Pemberton didn't sugarcoat it. The Ton thrives on scandal. This would be discussed in every drawing room in London. Augusta squeezed her hands. I'll be beside you through all of it. So will Catherine. You won't face them alone. Theodora closed her eyes, thinking of 8 years of cruelty, of being called useless, stupid, a burden, of watching her stepmother wear jewels bought with stolen money while Theodora wore cast-off grey dresses. Do it, she said. Pemberton nodded and began gathering his papers. But, Theodora continued, voice strengthening, I want to tell them myself, before the courts do. Augustus's eyebrows rose. Are you certain? No, she met his eyes, but I'm doing it anyway. There's a ball tonight, the Ashton ball. Everyone will be there, including Lady Whitmore. Theodora, I've hidden long enough. Her voice didn't shake. If this is going to become public gossip anyway, I want to control how it begins. I want to look her in the face when she learns she's lost. Catherine laughed, a sharp, delighted sound. Oh, I like her. I like her very much. Augustus stood pulling Theodora up with him. If this is what you want, I'll support you. But the moment it becomes too much... I know, she touched his face. You'll be there. That's all I need. The Ashton ball was even more crowded than the Whitmore ball had been 3 weeks earlier. Theodora stood at the entrance, Augustus's arm solid beneath her hand, and felt every eye turn toward them. Whispers rippled outward like rings in a pond. There she is. Engagement still stands. Absolutely scandalous. Courage, Augustus murmured. I'm right here. They descended the stairs together. Theodora wore a gown Augustus had commissioned, deep sapphire silk that made her eyes luminous. Her hair was swept up in an elegant style, and for the first time in her life, she looked like she belonged in these gilded halls. Lady Whitmore stood near the refreshment table, holding court with several matrons. When she saw Theodora, her face went pale, then florid with rage. You, she hissed as they approached, how dare you show your face? Lady Whitmore, Augustus's voice could have frozen the Thames. I suggest you remain silent for the next several minutes. The surrounding conversations died. Everyone within earshot turned to watch. Your Grace, Theodora said quietly, I'll handle this. He stepped back slightly but remained close, a wall of support at her back. Theodora looked at her stepmother, really looked at her for perhaps the first time without fear. She saw a woman whose power came from cruelty, whose worth was measured in others' pain. For 8 years, Theodora began, her voice carrying in the sudden hush, you told me I was worthless, a burden, unmarriageable. You paraded my supposed failures before society, made me a joke, took away every shred of dignity I possessed. Lady Whitmore's mouth opened. I'm not finished. Theodora's voice hardened. You stole my inheritance, £40,000 and my family estate. You forged documents, lied to creditors, and used my money to fund your lifestyle while treating me like a servant in my own home. Gasps erupted around them. Lady Whitmore's face drained of colour. Mr. Pemberton has filed documentation with the courts, Theodora continued. You'll be prosecuted for fraud. Everything you stole will be returned to me, and everyone here will know exactly what kind of woman you are." "You can't," Lady Whitmore sputtered. "I am your guardian." "You were my guardian, past tense." Theodora took a step closer, and satisfaction flooded through her when her stepmother flinched. "You have no power over me anymore. You never really did. You just convinced me I was too weak to fight back." "This is slander. I'll sue." "With what funds?" Pemberton stepped forward, cool and professional. "The ones you embezzled? I have bank records, Lady Whitmore, witness testimony, forged signatures. You have nothing but lies, and those have just run out." The crowd murmured, turning on Lady Whitmore like wolves scenting blood. Society loved a villain unmasked. Theodora should have felt triumphant. This was justice, exposure, everything she'd been denied. Instead, she just felt tired. "I didn't come here for revenge," she said, and her voice softened. "I came to tell you that you failed. You tried to break me, to make me believe I was nothing. But I survived. I'm loved. I'm valued." She glanced back at Augustus. "And I'm free of you." She turned away, Augustus immediately at her side. "Wait!" Lady Whitmore's voice cracked. "You can't just... We raised you." "You tormented me." Theodora didn't turn around. "There's a difference. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have better things to do than waste more time on you." As they walked away, the crowd parted. And then, slowly, hesitantly, someone began to clap. It was Catherine standing near the orchestra, her hands coming together in sharp, deliberate applause. Others joined. Then, more. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was applauding. Theodora felt tears prick her eyes. These people, many of whom had laughed at her 3 weeks ago, were acknowledging what had been done to her. Validating her pain. It didn't erase 8 years of cruelty, but it helped. Augustus guided her towards the terrace, and once they were alone in the cool night air, she finally let herself shake. "You were magnificent," he said, pulling her close. "I was terrified." "You were both." He kissed her temple. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear, Theodora. It's acting despite it." She laughed wetly against his chest. Catherine said something similar once. "She's wise." He tilted her face up. "Are you all right?" "I will be." She took a shaky breath. It felt good, telling the truth, taking back power. "Good." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You deserve power. You deserve everything." Music drifted from the ballroom, a waltz beginning. "Dance with me," Augustus said suddenly. "Out here?" "Anywhere, everywhere." He pulled her into position, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. "I told you 3 weeks ago I wanted to do this properly. Let me start now." They moved together in the moonlight. No witnesses, but the stars. Theodora let herself lean into him, let herself trust his lead, let herself believe this was real. "I have something to say," Augustus murmured as they swayed. "I've been waiting for the right moment, but I don't think there is a perfect moment. There's just now." Her heart stuttered. Augustus." "I love you." The words were quiet but absolute. "I loved you when I knelt in that ballroom 3 weeks ago, though I didn't fully understand it yet. I loved you when you challenged me in the garden. I loved you when you stood up to Lady Whitmore tonight, magnificent and fierce and utterly yourself." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You barely know me. I know everything that matters." He stopped dancing, cradling her face in both hands. "I know you're brave and kind and brilliant. I know you make me want to be a better man. I know that every moment with you feels like coming home after years of wandering. Her voice broke. "I love you too. I think I have since you gave me that library full of books, and treated me like I deserved beautiful things. He kissed her then, deep and searching and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Marry me," he said, properly this time. Not a dramatic rescue, but a conscious choice. Marry me because you want to, because we choose each other, because we're building something real. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He produced a ring from his pocket, sapphires set in platinum, catching moonlight like captured stars. "I've been carrying this for a week," he admitted, sliding it onto her finger, waiting for the courage to ask properly. "You already asked properly." She touched his face, committing every detail to memory. "You've been asking every day in 100 small ways. By seeing me, by valuing me, by loving me when I didn't know how to love myself. Then let me keep asking." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Let me spend the rest of my life choosing you." From the ballroom, music swelled. Augustus pulled her close, and they danced again, wrapped in starlight and each other. Inside, society would gossip about Lady Whitmore's exposure and the Duke's unusual marriage. But out here, under the stars, none of that mattered. What mattered was this. 2 lonely people had found each other. 2 damaged hearts were learning to trust again. 2 souls, scarred by different cruelties, were choosing love. "Take me home," Theodora whispered against his chest. "We are home," Augustus replied. "Wherever we're together, we're home." And for the first time in 8 years, Theodora believed in happy endings. Epilogue. 6 months later, the Duke and Duchess of Ashford's London residence had transformed. The East Wing, once silent and formal, now rang with voices. Theodora had turned half of it into a sanctuary for women escaping situations similar to her own. Wives trapped by cruel husbands, daughters sold off to pay debts, widows left destitute. Augustus had supported every decision, using his political influence to change laws and his fortune to fund the sanctuary. "You're going to bankrupt us," he said without heat, watching Theodora review applications in the library. "We have 3 estates and investments across Europe." She didn't look up from her paperwork. "We'll survive." He crossed to her desk and leaned against it, making her smile. Even 6 months married, he still took her breath away. "Lady Catherine says we're scandalising society again," he said. "We scandalise them by marrying. Might as well continue." She set down her pen. What does she actually think? That we're the best thing to happen to this family in generations. He caught her hand and pulled her up. "She's not wrong." Theodora went willingly into his arms. "I have news." "Good news?" "I think so." She bit her lip, that nervous habit he found so endearing. "The doctor confirmed it this morning. We're having a baby." Augustus froze. Then his face transformed with joy so pure it made her chest ache. "Truly?" "Truly." She laughed as he spun her around. "Careful! You'll make me dizzy." He set her down and immediately dropped to one knee, pressing his forehead to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he whispered. "I'm your father. Your mother is the bravest, kindest, most remarkable woman alive, and we're going to love you so much." Theodora ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you." He looked up. "For what?" "For choosing me, for saving me. You saved yourself." He rose and kissed her softly. "I just gave you a safe place to heal." "We healed each other," she corrected. "We did." He tucked her against his side, and they stood together, looking out the library windows at the gardens beyond. "Any regrets?" She thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago, broken, hopeless, convinced she was worthless. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, loved, valued, building something meaningful with her life. "Only one," she said. "What's that?" I should have asked you to marry me first. She grinned up at him. I would have made a better speech. Augustus laughed, the sound rich and free. You can propose to me again when the baby is born. I promise to say yes. I'll hold you to that. They stood together as the afternoon light gilded the library gold, and Theodora felt something settle deep in her bones. Peace. She was home. She was loved. She was enough. And that was the greatest happy ending of all.